Yes, sir.
This is hours before he dies, right?
Yes, sir.
You look like that when you put him in the bathtub?
I'm sorry.
You gotta make me a moment. Yes.
The prosecutor holds up a photograph of a dead 15-year-old boy named Timothy Ferguson in front of her mother in court, and the moment sends the courtroom into turmoil. The image shows a weak skeletal boy weighing just 69 pounds, his bones visible through his skin, his eyes sunken, his body wasted from months of starvation. The woman on the witness stand, Shanda Vander Ark, is being asked to look at what she did to her own son. The prosecutor's question is simple and devastating. He looks like that when you put him in the bathtub? The bathtub he's referring to was filled with ice water, and Timothy would be forced to remain in it for over 9 hours on his final day of life. And this is just one moment in what prosecutors are calling one of the most disturbing child abuse cases in Michigan history. A case where a mother who graduated second in her law school class, who scored 182 out of 200 on the bar exam, who worked as a law clerk for judges, systematically tortured her disabled son to death over the course of months. The torture wasn't impulsive or emotional. It was calculated, methodical, and meticulously documented. Thousands of text messages detail every punishment. Surveillance cameras captured Timothy's suffering. Motion sensors and alarms tracked his every movement. This wasn't abuse that happened in the shadows. This was abuse that Shanda Vander Ark orchestrated, monitored, and directed with the precision of someone planning a legal strategy, except the strategy was how to torture a child while covering her tracks. But what she believed was carefully hidden is now unraveling, with a devastating testimony coming from her own son, who once helped her carry out the abuse and is now telling the court in horrifying detail how it all happened.
Mr. Ferguson, you are testifying here today, and is it your understanding that you do have an agreement with the Muskegon County Prosecutor's Office in exchange for your testimony today against your mother, the defendant in this case, Shanda Vander Ark?
Yes, sir.
The witness taking the stand is 21 years old. His name is Paul Ferguson, and he's about to testify against his own mother in a murder trial. But this isn't just any murder trial. Paul is here to describe in excruciating detail how he helped torture his younger brother to death, following instructions sent to him in thousands of text messages from the woman sitting across the courtroom, the woman who gave birth to both of them, Shanda Vander Ark. On July 6, 2022, emergency responders were called to a home in Norton Shores, Michigan. When they arrived, they found 15-year-old Timothy Ferguson unresponsive. He was pronounced dead at the scene, but what first responders discovered was far from a tragic accident or sudden illness. Timothy weighed only 69 pounds at 68 inches tall, 62 pounds below the average weight for a boy his age and height. His body showed clear signs of severe malnutrition, dehydration, and hypothermia. The cause of death would be ruled a homicide. Inside the home, investigators found what could only be described as a house of horrors. Locks secured the refrigerator, freezer, and pantry. Shackles, handcuffs, and zip ties were discovered throughout the residence. Surveillance cameras monitored nearly every room. Motion sensors and alarms were strategically placed to track movement. In the basement, they found what prosecutors would later describe as Timothy's prison, a small closet under the stairs, barely large enough for a crib mattress placed on a urine-soaked tarp. To understand how this nightmare unfolded, we need to go back to when Timothy first came to live with his mother. Shanda Vander Ark was born on September 25, 1979, in Muskegon, Michigan. She came from a troubled background. Her own mother was imprisoned for attempting to hire a hitman to kill Vander Ark's grandmother. Reports indicate Vander Ark experienced abuse from her biological parents and spent time in foster care, experiences that may have normalized extreme punishments in her own parenting. Despite this difficult upbringing, Vander Ark appeared to be building a successful life. She earned a bachelor's degree in criminal justice from Liberty University in 2018 and a law degree from Western Michigan University Cooley Law School in 2023. She passed the bar exam with near-perfect scores, achieving a remarkable 182 out of 200, and worked as a law clerk for 2 judges. Vander Ark was married twice. Her first marriage was to Eric Ferguson, with whom she had 4 children. In 2012, during a custody battle in Oklahoma, she faced allegations of abuse and voluntarily surrendered custody rights to avoid termination by Child Protective Services. Oklahoma records show there were 9 CPS investigations between 2008 and 2009 involving allegations of neglect, unsafe conditions, and a filthy home. After surrendering custody, she had no further contact with those 4 children. Her second marriage was to Adam Vander Ark, with whom she had additional children including Timothy's brothers Paul and Nolan, sister Millie, and a youngest child identified only as G during the trial. Timothy Ferguson had autism, ADHD, speech and motor impairments, and other developmental disabilities. He lived with his father, Eric Ferguson, and stepmother in Oklahoma until May 2021, when Eric sent him to live with Shanda in Michigan, violating a court order that limited Shanda to only supervised visits with Timothy due to her prior abuse allegations. Eric's decision to send Timothy anyway would prove fatal, exposing dangerous gaps in interstate child welfare oversight. When Timothy arrived in May 2021, the household consisted of Shanda, her husband Adam, Paul Ferguson, who was then 19, Timothy, and young Gabriel. According to testimony, Timothy was described as slightly chubby when he first arrived, not skinny or malnourished. He was verbal and able to keep up at school level despite his disabilities. Then in February 2022, everything changed. Adam Vander Ark suffered a stroke and moved out of the family home to live with his parents in West Olive. This left Shanda as the sole caregiver while she worked 12-hour days as a law clerk from 6 a.m. to 6 p.m. The family was, under severe financial strain, living paycheck to paycheck. Shanda was still paying child support for her other children in Oklahoma, $1,000 a month deducted from her paycheck. Paul, working part-time at Applebee's, was helping with groceries. It was during this period that the systematic torture of Timothy Ferguson began. The horrific nature of the torture was laid bare in chilling detail by Shanda Vander's own son, Paul. Though he was himself complicit in the crime, he turned against his mother, testifying for the prosecution and emerging as their star witness. Paul had pleaded guilty to first-degree child abuse in exchange for testifying truthfully against his mother and would later be sentenced to 30 to 100 years in prison for his role in Timothy's death.
Mr. Ferguson, you are testifying here today, and is it your understanding that you do have an agreement with the Muskegon County Prosecutor's Office in exchange for your testimony today against your mother, the defendant in this case, Shanda Vander Ark?
Yes, sir.
Paul was 20 years old at the time of Timothy's death and 21 when he testified. During his testimony, Paul described himself as the enforcer, the one who carried out the physical punishments while Shanda directed everything from work via text messages and by monitoring the home's extensive camera system. The abuse began with confinement and surveillance. Timothy was forced to live in a small closet under the basement stairs. Paul testified about this space that would become Timothy's prison.
Where did he actually sleep most nights?
In the closet.
What did you call the closet? Was there a name you used to refer to the closet?
The small room.
And what was in the small room if Timothy was in the small room?
There was a camera monitoring him, even when he slept.
Was there an alarm on the door as well?
Yes, sir.
Some type of motion sensor or alarm?
Motion, vibration, yes.
Paul described this closet as a demented version of Harry Potter's bedroom during his testimony. The small room contained only a crib mattress on a blue tarp that reeked of urine and feces, an Amazon box in the corner, and little else. A camera monitored Timothy constantly, even when he slept. An alarm on the door alerted if he tried to leave. Motion sensors throughout the house tracked his movements. Paul had apps on his phone connected to all these cameras and sensors, receiving alerts whenever Timothy moved. When Timothy slept, he was required to keep his hands on his head and face toward the camera. If he moved, if he put his arms down, if he rolled over, alarms would sound and punishments would follow.
What was the purpose of the cameras being inside the residence?
To watch Timothy.
And who would be watching Timothy on those cameras?
My mother, or when she couldn't, she had me do so.
And how is it you would, kind of explain for the jury if you can, how is it that you watched the cameras so you could watch what Timothy was doing?
I would log into the app on my phone, and it would alert me if there was a motion movement.
The system was designed so that Timothy could go nowhere in the house without being watched. Shanda monitored these cameras from her phone at work, frequently texting Paul instructions based on what she saw Timothy doing. Alongside the confinement came starvation.
And we have those text messages from January through the time of your brother's death in July of 2022. Is that your understanding?
Yes, sir.
At some point in time in February, there's a discussion fairly early in those text messages about blocking Timothy's access to food. Can you describe what was happening at that time and how he was restricted from getting access to food?
He was sneaking food that was not necessary at that time, and it was solved by placing locks on the fridge, freezer, and pantry.
And when you say he was sneaking food that wasn't necessary, who would make that determination that it wasn't necessary?
Shanda.
And what type of food are we talking about that he would sneak that wasn't necessary?
Sweets, or anything he could really get his hands on.
So as early as February, there was restriction. The locks were going on the freezer and the refrigerator, and you said there was also some type of lock on the pantry. Is that right?
Yes, sir.
Beginning in February 2022, locks were installed on the refrigerator, freezer, and pantry. Text messages from February 18, 2022 show this was when the food restriction began in earnest. Over the following months, text messages documented Timothy being accused of sneaking food, chips, brownies, frozen chicken nuggets, even the crust of a burger. Each time, the punishment was severe. Then Paul testified about one of the cruelest forms of punishment, the hot sauce torture.
At some point in time, were you asked to start feeding him bread with hot sauce on it?
Yes.
And who asked you to do that?
Shanda,
Why were you giving him bread with hot sauce on it?
because he was supposedly misbehaving.
And how would you, describe to the jury what you would do to do that and to make him eat the bread with hot sauce?
I would put it on bread, have him stand in the kitchen area near the back door and watch him eat until he finished.
The meals Timothy received in his final months consisted primarily of bread soaked in extremely hot sauce, varieties containing Carolina Reaper or Trinidad scorpion peppers, some of the hottest peppers in the world. Text messages show Vander Ark instructing Paul to put more hot sauce on than you did yesterday and ensuring he ate at least 3 slices with hot sauce. The testimony revealed the cruel progression of this punishment and how Vander Ark monitored it from work.
And was he required to eat it until it was all gone?
Yes, sir.
Did it ever look like he wanted to eat the bread with hot sauce?
No.
Were there times where you were told that he could have something besides bread with hot sauce on it if he ate the bread with hot sauce first?
Regular bread, yes.
So he had to eat that bread with hot sauce first, and then he could have some regular bread.
Yes.
Did he have to wait a period of time before he could eat the regular bread, though?
Yes, sir.
What, do you remember about what that was, about how long?
30 minutes?
Text messages read in court showed Vander Ark's detailed instructions about the hot sauce punishment. The prosecution presented these messages to demonstrate the calculated nature of the abuse. If he ate the bread with hot sauce and waited 30 minutes, he was allowed to have regular bread without hot sauce.
With taking the bread out of the equation, was hot sauce used in some other fashion as a form of discipline for him?
It was poured directly into his mouth.
And who would do that?
Me or Shanda, me under orders.
On June 13, 2022, about 3 weeks before Timothy's death, Paul sent his mother a photograph showing how thin Timothy had become. His text read, "He's bone-thin, mama. I honestly think we need to actually feed him." Vander Ark's response was simply to give him bread. Give him bread with peanut butter.
For the record, this is People's 36A. This has been previously shown to the jury. Who took that photo of your brother?
Me?
And you sent it to your mother?
Yes, sir.
Why did you send it to your mother?
Because I was concerned with how thin he was.
And that photo was taken on, do you remember what the date was?
Not the exact, no.
If your phone indicated it was June 13th, you'd have no reason to dispute that.
No, sir.
And you just became, again, the reason you sent it to your mother was why?
Because I was concerned about how thin he was.
And you remember what your mother told you to give him after you sent her that photograph?
Bread?
And then is there a reference to bread and some peanut butter?
Yes.
Paul testified that he once secretly made Timothy a real meal, a peanut butter and jelly sandwich and scrambled eggs with cheese, but never told his mother because he didn't want her to be upset. The punishments went far beyond food restriction. Paul testified about the physical restraints used on Timothy.
At some point, did you utilize some type of alarm or alarms on his body to alert you if he was moving?
A vibration detector, yes.
Was there more than one that he was required to wear at times?
At times, yes.
Where were those devices located on his body?
They were normally tied to the back loop of his belt, or the back loop of his pants, I apologize.
And was there something placed on his wrist as well at any point?
Handcuffs, and before that, zip ties, zip cuffs.
Timothy was forced to stand facing a wall for hours, sometimes overnight, with his hands on his head. Motion sensors alerted Paul if Timothy moved. He was made to crouch against a wall in a sitting position with no support, a punishment Vander Ark instructed Paul to continue until it looked like he was about to fall over. Text messages from May 18, 2022 show Vander Ark ordering handcuffs and leg cuffs for Timothy from Amazon. When Timothy complained the zip ties were too tight, Vander Ark's response was leave them and she'd deal with it after she got home.
And so what was happening that caused you to send that text message and had that exchange with your mother about those zip cuffs?
He was complaining about them being too tight.
What was your mother's response when he was complaining about those being too tight?
to leave them and she'd deal with it after she got home.
So the jury has some clarity in terms of a schedule here.
Timothy was forced to run up and down the patio stairs at the back of the house while Paul chased him. When Timothy sneaked food, Vander Ark instructed Paul to make him throw up by putting his finger down Timothy's throat. Text messages revealed the shocking detail with which Vander Ark directed these punishments.
What was it? What part of the burger is it that he ate?
Just the crust.
And what was your mother's response when you told her that he had eaten the crust of that burger?
Make him throw it up.
Did you try to do that?
I tried at first, yes.
How did you try to do that?
Putting a finger into his mouth as instructed to the back of his throat to induce vomiting.
So who gave you the instruction to put your finger in the back of his throat?
Shanda.
Perhaps the most cruel form of torture was the ice baths. Paul testified to placing Timothy in bathtubs filled with cold water and ice cubes for extended periods. On July 5, 2022, the day before Timothy died, this torture reached its horrific conclusion.
At some point in time, was there a form of discipline introduced that involved you placing Timothy in a cold tub?
Yes.
And what was the mechanism for that? How did you do that?
Clog the tub, plug it, turn on the water, and take the ice that was in our ice maker upstairs and put it in. And have him get in.
Initially, how long was he supposed to sit in the cold water?
30 minutes.
30 minutes? And that, when we say cold water, we actually mean water with ice cubes in it? Is that what you're talking about?
Yes.
And when did that start in relation to when Timothy died, if you remember? And do you know about how many times you did that up until the day before Timothy died?
Before the day that Timothy died?
The day before Timothy died, we'll get to that in just a moment, and I believe that...
3, then.
So you remember doing it 3 times before the day before Timothy died?
Yes.
And who would direct you to put him in the ice bath?
Shanda.
Was there some type of camera in the bathroom as well?
Yes, on the counter.
Was that camera monitored by somebody if you were in the bathtub, or if you were in the bathroom with Timothy?
Shanda.
Were you instructed to stay in the bathroom with Timothy when he was in the tub?
Yes.
Why?
To ensure that he couldn't get comfortable or try to turn the water hot.
Paul put Timothy in an ice bath at approximately 2 p.m. on July 5th. Timothy would remain in that bath for over 9 hours. During this time, Vander Ark directed Paul via text messages with cruel precision, turning Timothy's suffering into a game.
In the ice bath? Was your mother giving you instructions on what to do with him while he was in that tub at that point in time?
Yes, sir.
What was she telling you to do?
Make him uncomfortable, and at one point she had me heat up a pizza roll to see if he would be responsive to enticement.
Did you actually do that?
Yes.
And so describe for the jury exactly what you did with that pizza roll with Timothy in the tub.
I held it close, and when he responded, as per instruction, I was to pull it away from him.
After spending over 9 hours in the ice bath, Timothy was dragged back into the small closet. Paul testified that Timothy was near lifeless at this point and had to be physically dragged because he couldn't stand or walk on his own. Surveillance footage that was played in court showed Vander Ark dragging Timothy into the closet, positioning him in front of the camera and telling him, "You owe me the biggest apology on the face of the earth, and then maybe you can get out to go to the bathroom." When Timothy rolled over away from the camera, she returned, repositioned him, and according to prosecutor testimony during closing arguments, held his mouth shut, saying, "See, dummy, you don't need to open your mouth every time you breathe." Those were the last words anyone said to Timothy Ferguson. The next morning, July 6, 2022, Paul discovered Timothy was dead.
When you got home at 1 o'clock, did you go to your bedroom?
Yes.
Downstairs in the basement area, the lower level?
Yes, sir.
Did you see Timothy at all?
No.
Did you check on him at all?
No.
When did you next become aware that something was happening with Timothy?
The next morning.
And what happened?
I had to get up early so that Shanda could drive me to the premises area of work. And I'd gone to the laundry room to get a pair of clean socks and was then made aware that he was not breathing.
And where was he at that point in time?
In the closet.
And who made you aware that he wasn't breathing?
Shanda.
Timothy was found in the closet, not breathing, his eyes wide open and glazed over. He had not moved from the position Vander Ark had placed him in hours earlier. When Paul found Timothy unresponsive, he asked his mother if they should call 911. According to Paul's testimony during cross-examination, Vander Ark said no. It would be 18 minutes before 911 was finally called. During those 18 minutes, Vander Ark instructed Paul to change Timothy's clothes. Timothy had been wearing only an adult diaper when he died in the closet. Paul testified that both he and Vander Ark dressed Timothy in a hoodie and jeans, and Vander Ark had Paul remove his own belt and put it on Timothy because the pants were too big. Before calling 911, Vander Ark told Paul they would have to say Timothy had been on a hunger strike and that he had been found on his bed, not in the closet. During cross-examination, defense attorney Fred Johnson questions Paul extensively about his own role in the abuse and his motivations for testifying. Paul is asked about his relationship with his mother and why he followed her instructions.
Did you know what Child Protective Services were when you're 19?
More or less.
The one thing, we just listened to almost an hour and a half of tapes, of transcripts from your text messages. You did say no to her when she asked you to put hot sauce on his penis. But you didn't, okay. You weren't scared? You weren't scared to refuse her?
Not at that point.
Paul testifies that he did say no to his mother once. When she suggested in a text message that he put hot sauce on Timothy's genitals, Paul refused. He testifies that the suggestion was beyond cruel, beyond what he would do, but the defense presses him on why he could refuse that instruction but not the others. Paul testifies that he was scared of his mother, that he had low self-esteem, and that he desperately wanted to make her proud. When asked directly if he loved Timothy, Paul gives an answer that hangs in the courtroom: "I suppose I didn't love him enough." The defense questions Paul about his plea agreement and whether his testimony is influenced by the promise of leniency. Paul acknowledges he has a cooperation agreement with prosecutors, but maintains he is telling the truth. The defense also questions Paul about his memory of events, trying to find inconsistencies. Paul testifies that some details are fuzzy, but the overall pattern of abuse is clear in his mind and documented in the thousands of text messages. The prosecution then calls additional witnesses to corroborate Paul's testimony and establish the physical evidence. Detective John Pieskey of the Norton Shores Police Department testifies about the investigation. He describes arriving at the scene on July 6, 2022, and finding Timothy's body. He testifies about the condition of the home, the locks on the refrigerator, freezer, and pantry, the surveillance cameras throughout the house, the motion, sensors and alarms, the handcuffs and zip ties found in various locations, the shackles discovered in the home. Detective Pieskey testifies about interviewing Shanda Vander Ark at the scene and later at the police station. The detective testifies about body cam footage that captured Vander Ark's statements to officers at the scene.
Now, you said the last time you saw him was 5:30 this morning?
Yeah.
Did he say anything
He had fallen out of bed.
at 5:30?
Yeah.
You sure it wasn't earlier?
I mean, it's possible. I thought it was 5:30, but I wasn't super awake. I heard a thump, and I came down, and he's kind of laying on his side, kind of like, what the heck? And I reached out. I'm sorry.
That's all right.
Sorry. Oh my god. Oh my god. Yeah. And I reached out and he pulled himself up, and I asked him if he's okay, and I just asked if he hit his head. He said, no, I think my knees on my chest. I think he couldn't tell me how he fell. Oh my god. No, I don't know what to do. Oh my god.
When police arrived at the home on July 6, 2022, Vander Ark began lying immediately. Body cam footage captured her telling officers a fabricated story about Timothy's condition.
Tripped down the stairs a couple of times, like just half the flight. And then later he came back to me, admitted he did it intentionally. But I've asked him, I'm like, you're trying to hurt yourself? He's like, no, I just wanted to see what would happen. That's the way a lot of times he wants to see what would happen if he does stuff. And oh my gosh.
And I guess he's prescribed ADHD medicine, but he's not taking it.
Yeah, because he wasn't able to sleep with it. And he was doing really well, and he asked me if he could not take it, and I said okay. And it was killing his appetite. That doesn't help. He quit taking it about the time of the first hunger strike, because when he finally started eating, and he was.
But he did eat last night, you said?
Yes. He had some toast with butter on it, is what he had. That's all he wanted to eat. He said his stomach was a little upset, and he didn't want to eat anything else.
According to police reports and trial testimony, Vander Ark told officers Timothy had been on a hunger strike starting shortly after her husband's stroke in January, that he went on another hunger strike about 2 weeks before he died, that she realized he was skinny the night before and threatened to take him to the ER if he didn't eat, that she made him toast with butter and watched him eat 3/4 of it, that he fell out of bed at 5:30 a.m. and she had to put him back, and that she found him unresponsive on his bed when she went to check on him in the morning. None of this was true. The prosecution introduces hundreds of text messages into evidence. Over 80 pages of messages between Shanda Vander Ark and Paul Ferguson are read aloud in court over the course of the trial, with potentially 2,000 pages reviewed by Judge Matthew Castle. These messages span from February 2022 through July 6, 2022, documenting the systematic escalation of Timothy's torture. The messages show Shanda directing every aspect of Timothy's punishment from her job as a law clerk. She sent messages throughout her workdays, monitoring Timothy on the home cameras via her phone, instructing Paul on what punishments to administer, how long they should last, and what consequences should follow if Timothy didn't comply. After the prosecution rests, the defense presents its case. Defense attorney Fred Johnson calls Shanda Vander Ark to testify in her own defense. This is a risky strategy. When Shanda Vander Ark took the stand in her own defense, she would be confronted with the mountain of evidence against her, particularly the thousands of text messages that documented her directing Timothy's torture.
All right, Mr. Johnson, you can call your first witness. All right, Ms. Vander Ark, if you can come around here, please. In this matter now pending, do you swear or affirm the testimony you're about to give will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
I do, yes, sir.
All right, you can put your hand down, grab a seat. Please state your name for the record, spelling your first name and last name.
Shanda, S-H-A-N-D-A, Vander Ark, V-A-N-D-E-R, space, capital A-R-K.
Thank you, Ms. Vander Ark. You're being called to testify in your own cases. You understand that?
Yes, sir.
During her testimony, Vander Ark claimed to have significant memory gaps about the abuse, repeatedly stating she didn't remember sending text messages, didn't remember giving instructions, didn't remember the punishments. She blamed her memory issues on dissociation and PTSD from witnessing her husband's stroke.
Is it fair to say that you just don't remember those text messages?
Most of them, I don't remember.
Most of them?
Yeah. But then you've got your big bind. I can pretty much guarantee I don't remember most of that either. I don't.
She claimed the leg irons found in the home were Paul's idea and that she had no knowledge of them being used on Timothy. She said the hot sauce was Paul's idea and that Timothy loved spicy food. She denied any intention of hurting her son, yet she could remember specific details that helped her defense, like Timothy weighing 104 pounds sometime after Mother's Day, a detail she recalled with perfect clarity, despite claiming she couldn't remember the abuse documented. In her own text messages, the prosecution systematically dismantled her testimony. Assistant Prosecutor Matt Roberts confronted her with the text messages, with the surveillance footage, with the physical evidence. When shown photographs of Timothy's emaciated body taken just hours after she claimed to have given him a warm bath, Vander Ark had a dramatic response.
This is hours before he dies, right?
Yes, sir.
You look like that when you put him in the bathtub?
I'm sorry.
Gotta make me a moment.
Yes.
Vander Ark vomited on the witness stand after being shown photographs of Timothy's body, the same photographs she'd seen during a hearing just days before, without such a reaction. The judge called a brief recess as Vander Ark suffered what her attorney described as a panic attack. This would not be the last time Vander Ark's health issues would become central to the case. The prosecution argued her reaction was calculated, designed to evoke sympathy, pointing out that she had reviewed these same photos previously without becoming ill.
You may be seated. Mr. Roberts, you can continue.
Thank you. Before we get back to the question I originally asked Ms. Vander Ark, you just obviously had quite a visual reaction there to the jury, a physical reaction in front of the jury looking at those photographs. That's not the first time you've seen these photographs, though, is it?
No, sir.
In fact, you sat in this very courtroom not even a week ago on Friday when we had a hearing about those photographs and looked at those photographs, didn't
I
you?
did not look at them last week, sir.
You didn't look at them last week?
No, sir, I did not.
When confronted with these messages, Vander Ark's primary response was, "I don't remember." When asked about specific acts of cruelty, her answer was, "I don't remember." When shown evidence of her lies to police, she claimed trauma and dissociation. The prosecutor's response was pointed, asking how she could hold down a demanding job as a legal clerk if her memory problems were so severe, how she could remember to text Paul every morning to wake up and walk the dog, how she could remember Timothy's exact weight months ago but not remember torturing him. During closing arguments, the prosecution laid out the full horror of what had been done to Timothy Ferguson. Assistant Prosecutor Matt Roberts systematically walked the jury through the evidence, highlighting how Vander Ark had made Timothy a prisoner in his own home, how she had deprived him of food while the family dogs never went without, how she had directed every aspect of his torture through text messages and camera monitoring, and how she had lied repeatedly to police after his death. Roberts emphasized that Vander Ark was not just an overwhelmed mother, she was a highly intelligent woman who knew exactly what she was doing.
Now, Ms. Vander Ark was up here yesterday for quite some time, and she told you about what an intelligent lady she is, and I will give her that credit. She is a highly, highly intelligent lady. It takes a lot to finish second in your class in law school, graduate, magna cum laude. It takes a lot to get a score of 182 and pass the bar exam. Heck, it takes a lot to just pass the bar exam, let alone get a score of 182. So this is a highly intelligent woman we're dealing with. She clerked for not one, but two different judges, was clerking for a judge at the time her child died. Yet she wants you to believe that she doesn't remember any of this. Can't remember any of these things. I don't remember that text message. I don't remember doing that. I don't remember saying that. Every time she's confronted with something that she did or something that she directed to be done to Timothy, she can't remember. How does this woman hold down a job as a legal clerk? If your memory problems are that bad that you can't send these text messages, how are you not seeing a therapist? How are you not on medication to address these issues? You couldn't hold down a job if you were that, let alone a job as a legal clerk, if you had that many memory problems. Let's talk about the things that she can remember. Oh, right after Mother's Day, he weighed 104 pounds. And I asked a couple times, 108 pounds? No, 104 pounds. Absolutely certain about that. Somehow she can remember 2 months before Timothy dies, what he weighed. That's a detail that she can remember.
He pointed to her ability to score 182 on the bar exam, to graduate second in her law school class, to hold down a demanding job, and argued that someone with that level of intelligence could not claim she didn't understand the consequences of starving a child, of putting him in ice baths for hours, of denying him medical care.
That doesn't sound like somebody who doesn't know what they're doing. That doesn't sound like somebody who has memory issues. That doesn't sound like somebody who's not in control of their actions. She's in control of everything. She is watching everything. She knows everything. Even when Paul is supposed to be watching, she's watching as well and critiquing how well Paul is doing watching. He's with Timothy at the tub, and she's watching to make sure that Timothy doesn't look too comfortable in the tub. Move his head. Looks like he's trying to get comfortable. Pour some cold water on him. Do the pizza roll thing. Somehow, as an act of grace, mercy, whatever you want to call it, go ahead and give him 2 pizza rolls, and I don't care if they're frozen. It's difficult to understand how a person can be so detached to another person, let alone a child.
The prosecution walked the jury through the final 24 hours of Timothy's life, describing the 9-hour ice bath, the cruel game with the pizza rolls, the dragging of Timothy's near-lifeless body back to the closet, Vander Ark's final words to him, the 18-minute delay before calling 911, and the web of lies told to police.
We know the last thing that she did and said to her son. You could hear it in Lieutenant Hooksman's testimony today. The last thing she did to her son was to drag him into this small room, throw him down on the ground like he was a piece of meat on a tarp in the room where she says he wanted to be. That was his comfort. Positions him in front of the camera so she can see. Calls him stupid. Then when he has the indignity to roll over, no, that's not good enough. She comes back. Positions him again in front of the camera. Makes the dog lick his face to get a reaction from him. Holds his mouth closed and said, "See, dummy? You don't need to open your mouth to breathe." Imagine those being the last words you said to your child. So that's what it was. That's the last thing anybody said to Timothy. So what's the last thing she says before she calls 911 to Paul? We'll have to tell him he's been on a hunger strike. Before that, where's your belt? Put your belt on him. I want to make it look like he's been this way. No emotion in her voice, no tears. Start with, why does it take you 18 minutes to call 911? You saw the image. You saw Timothy laying there on the floor. You heard them repeatedly talking about how he was stiff, how he wasn't moving, how he wasn't breathing, how his eyes were fixed open, and they don't call 911. Who does that? How does a parent do that? Paul asks her, should we call 911? Should we call for an ambulance? Not yet.
The jury deliberated for less than 1 hour before returning guilty verdicts on all counts. Vander Ark was convicted of first-degree felony murder, with the underlying felony being first-degree child abuse, and of first-degree child abuse as a separate count.
All right, that's
The
okay.
people of the state of Michigan versus Shanda Vander Ark, count 1, charging open murder involving the death of Timothy Ferguson. We find her guilty of first-degree felony murder. Count 2, first-degree child abuse. We find her guilty of first-degree child abuse.
All right, thank you. Thank you. The court will record the verdict for the record. Mr. Johnson, would you like the jury polled? Please, Your Honor.
Vander Ark was not present to hear the verdict. She had signed a stipulation allowing her to remain absent from the courtroom when the jury returned. On January 23, 2024, Shanda Vander Ark was sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole, plus an additional 50 to 100 years for the child abuse conviction. During sentencing, Judge Matthew Casel described the case as the most sadistic and disturbing he had seen in his 30 years on the bench, calling Vander Ark's actions intentional torture that caused long-term suffering. Timothy's siblings Nolan and Millie gave victim impact statements at sentencing. Nolan stated, "If I can't have my brother back, then she shouldn't have her freedom." Millie expressed regret for not protecting Timothy and described the trauma the family continues to experience. Vander Ark declined to speak at her sentencing. Paul Ferguson was sentenced in February 2024 to 30 to 100 years in prison for his role in Timothy's death. While prosecutors acknowledged that Paul was manipulated by his mother and acted under her direction, they emphasized that he was an adult who made choices to participate in the abuse rather than seek help for Timothy. Vander Ark has appealed her conviction, challenging her convictions and seeking a new trial on grounds of ineffective assistance of counsel and mental incompetency during trial. Her main claims include that her attorney, Fred Johnsonin, made an unauthorized concession to manslaughter in his closing arguments without her consent, and that she was in a catatonic state during trial due to health issues that rendered her incompetent to stand trial. In July 2025, Judge Cassell denied relief on the incompetency claims, but granted a Ginther hearing to evaluate the effectiveness of her counsel. This hearing began on November 25, 2025, but was adjourned early after Vander Ark testified briefly for only about 3 minutes, complaining of headaches, lightheadedness, shaking, nausea, and elevated blood pressure. Judge Casel expressed skepticism about her health claims, noting they seemed situational and similar to her behavior during trial, but ultimately excused her and continued the hearing to a future date. As of December 2025, the hearing remains pending with no decision issued. This case stands as a stark reminder of the worst capabilities of parental abuse, of how a person entrusted with a child's care can become their worst tormentor, and of how a disabled child's vulnerability can be exploited by someone who views them as less than human. Timothy Ferguson was 15 years old. He had autism. He liked to take things apart. He wanted to play baseball. He deserved protection, love, and care. Instead, he received systematic torture that ended in his death, alone in a closet, positioned in front of a camera, after being told he didn't need to open his mouth to breathe. Shanda Vander Ark will spend the rest of her life in prison, but no sentence can undo what was done to Timothy Ferguson in the home where he should have been safe.